Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Fiscal Fridays. If you enjoy this show, please be sure to like this video and subscribe to this channel to keep Idaho Freedom Foundation content in your newsfeed. More than $500 million is spent in Medicaid on prescription drugs each year. Bureaucrats from the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare have argued that this one expenditure is the reason behind the ballooning Medicaid budget. But is this really true? Between 2017 and 2022, Medicaid spending swelled by $1.6 billion. That is 5 times greater than the growth of drug spending. Is it really the rising prices of greedy drug companies, or is it actually the fault of leftist legislators and bureaucrats who keep growing Idaho's welfare state? The reality is that expanding Medicaid to able-bodied, working-age adults and keeping ineligibles on the rolls is a much larger contributor to surging costs. Meanwhile, costs per enrollee are at a pace with inflation. There is only one way to truly reduce the cost of Medicaid, and that is to get people off the program. Last year, Medicaid boasted the largest budget ever passed by the Idaho legislature at $4.7 billion. For perspective, this is about $132 million more than state spending on all Idaho's public schools and universities, 2.5 times more than all state-funded commercial, infrastructure, and transportation expenses, and 7.5 times more than all state spending on public safety and prisons. You get the point. It's big. So what makes it so expensive? The IDHW director, Dept, argues that it is due to the expensive miracle drugs like the cure for hepatitis C that is causing these surging prices. Looking at the change in cost per enrollee reveals that disabled beneficiaries saw the biggest increase in cost. This makes sense when you recall that this is the most expensive group on Medicaid and that these enrollees are more likely to need more expensive medications. But it turns out that this group only contributed to 19% of the total increase in the spending on the program. It seems that prescription drug prices are just a red herring. Prescription drug spending only contributed to 1/5 of the overall cost increases in the program. Spending on this category was largely stagnant as a proportion of the Medicaid budget until 2020, when COVID and Medicaid expansion hit at the same time. This reveals the true driver of cost: enrollment. About 55% of the spending growth within the Medicaid program can be attributed to Medicaid expansion. This equates to more than $856 million. Of course, spending on Medicaid expansion and spending on prescriptions are not mutually exclusive. Increased enrollment is going to drive the total cost of services too. At IFF, we estimate that 82% of the change in total spending on prescription drugs can actually be attributed to bad enrollment policies, like allowing ineligibles to stay on the rolls and expanding Medicaid to able-bodied working-age adults. Though the expansion population continues to grow, claims for services have remained surprisingly flat. That is, except for prescription drugs. Monthly prescription drug claims in the expansion population are growing about 2.5 times faster than the rate of enrollment. This means that as the state continues to bring on this new patient demographic, spending on prescriptions will continue to rise. The narrative that prescription drug prices alone drive the rising cost of Medicaid is a convenient way to redirect the blame for oversized welfare programs. Pointing the finger at the drug companies implies that the cost of the program is out of the hands of the state. Taxpayers should blame greedy capitalists for their empty pocketbooks. In reality, government welfare is the reason behind these cost increases. As enrollment rises, costs mount, and governments must find new ways to pay for everything. State initiatives to control costs in the Medicaid program, like prescription benefit managers and prior authorization, have done little to control spending. When coupled with federal drug price regulations, these initiatives raise the cost of healthcare for everyone. This makes more people dependent on the government for healthcare services, and the cycle continues until government runs out of other people's money and the system breaks. Part of the problem is that government programs have the wrong priorities. They focus on how many people they can get enrolled rather than how many people no longer depend on the government assistance. The alternative philosophy is counter to socialist nature of these programs and bureaucrats' perverted understanding of benevolence. Regardless, the only way to reduce costs is to promote self-reliance and independence from government services. In short, keeping ineligibles and able-bodied working-age adults on the Medicaid rolls has led to the cost explosion in Medicaid, not prescription drug prices. There needs to be a paradigm shift in the Idaho State House toward shrinking government rather than finding ways to sustain the current growth of the welfare state. For more episodes of Fiscal Fridays or other great content from the Idaho Freedom Foundation, including the companion article to this week's video, please visit the idahofreedom.org. Thank you.